movie begins in the year 1480. Prince Vlad of Romania is enjoying moments of happiness with his beautiful wife, Elisabeta. But this happiness was not meant to last long, as fate had something else in store for them. Suddenly, some soldiers arrive at the palace and take the prince away, as enemy troops had camped on Romania's borders and a terrible war had broken out. Vlad now had to leave his beloved wife and go to the battlefield. But before leaving, he gave strict orders to his soldiers: no matter what happens, they must ensure Elisabeta reaches the next fortress safely. Before going to war, Vlad went to the Pope and asked him to pray to God to give him the strength to fight and protect his wife. After this, the prince took up his sword and set out for the battlefield with his soldiers, where his destiny awaited him. Meanwhile, as the soldiers were taking Elisabeta through the winding paths of the forest, an enemy archer hidden high in the trees suddenly attacked them. In an instant, 2 soldiers fell to the ground, arrows piercing their chests. The remaining soldiers drew their swords and charged at the enemies. Screams, the neighing of horses, and the clashing of swords echoed all around. In this chaos, Elisabeta spurred her horse with all her might and fled into the forest. Back on the battlefield, Vlad declared an attack on the enemies. His soldiers spread oil on the ground and set it on fire, creating a massive wall of flame in moments. Seeing this, the enemies trembled with fear. The 2 armies clashed. Vlad's sword sliced through the air, beheading enemies. A battle of blood and fire spread across the field. But then, a wounded soldier staggered to Vlad and said in a trembling voice, "My lord, Elisabeta has been attacked." Upon hearing this, the color drained from Vlad's face. Without wasting a moment, he mounted his horse and raced towards the forest. Meanwhile, Elisabeta had reached that terrifying forest where hundreds of traps lay hidden beneath the snow, dangerous traps for catching bears. The enemy soldiers pursuing her arrived there, and one by one, their horses' legs got caught in the snares. Amid a shower of arrows, the soldiers fell. But then, fate abandoned Elisabeta too. Her horse also got entangled in a snare and fell to the ground. Now, the enemy soldiers raised their swords, making their way through the snow, slowly advancing towards Elisabeta. The cold wind and the smell of blood filled the air. Elisabeta, panicking, stepped back, but as she took a step, her foot got caught in a bear trap. With a metallic sound, the trap clamped onto her leg, and her scream echoed through the forest. At that very moment, Vlad arrived. Fire in his eyes, anger on his face, and fear in his heart. But fate seemed to be toying with him. His horse also got caught in a trap hidden under the snow and fell. Now Vlad drew his sword and charged at those enemies on foot. With every strike, blood splattered on the snow. One by one, the soldiers fell to his sword. The last soldier remained. Vlad threw his sword with all his might. It sliced through the air and pierced the enemy. But the next moment, that very sword struck Elisabeta. Time seemed to stop. The bravery on Vlad's face shattered in an instant. He ran and lifted his wife into his arms. But it was too late. Elisabeta's eyes had closed forever. Vlad's screams could melt the very snow of the forest. Trembling with rage, he went straight to the Pope. He shouted, "I spilled the blood of thousands in the name of your God. I fought every war for him. I asked for every prayer from him. Then why didn't he save my wife?" His voice trembled. "You said she would be safe, but she died. Now I want my wife back, even if it cost me my soul." Actually, Maria was a beautiful girl living in Italy, engaged to the nephew of the Queen of England. But on the wedding day, something happened that shocked everyone. Maria never wanted to get married in a church, so her family arranged the wedding at their mansion. Everything was proceeding normally, the mansion decorated with flowers, a crowd of guests, and an atmosphere of joy. But then, the prince, without telling anyone, called a bishop so the marriage could receive God's blessing. As soon as the bishop entered and looked at Maria, her eyes suddenly turned red. Her body began to tremble, and she started muttering in strange voices. Everyone retreated in fear. The bishop, nervously, tried to approach her. But then, a terrible growl came from within Maria, and she lunged at the bishop. She became so strong that even 4 men together couldn't hold her back. The bishop fell to the ground, deep marks appearing on his neck. Meanwhile, all the candles in the room extinguished by themselves, and a cold wind spread through the atmosphere. It felt as if a dark shadow had gripped the mansion. Now the doctor tells the priest that since that day, Maria started saying strange things. Sometimes she spoke in a different voice, sometimes she started writing on the walls, and whenever anyone prayed, she would scream. So, they were forced to imprison her in this basement because she was no longer human. After this, the doctor tells the priest that Maria was born in the year 1739. meaning she is over 130 years old. Upon hearing this, the color drained from everyone's faces. Now suspicion had turned into certainty. Was Maria not human, but the devil himself? Suddenly, Maria's eyes opened. Silence fell over the room, and the priest slowly moved towards her. He saw that Maria's teeth were sharp, just like an animal's. Seeing this, the priest said in terror, "She is a vampire." The priest knew that vampires cannot tolerate sunlight. He immediately opened the window. As the first ray of sunlight fell on Maria's body, her skin began to burn, and smoke started rising. Now the priest placed a cross in front of her, and as soon as she touched it, the cross caught fire by itself. Seeing this sight, everyone's hair stood on end. Then the priest made a slight cut on the finger of the junior doctor, Simon, and let a few drops of his blood fall into Maria's mouth. Suddenly, there was a stir in Maria's body, and she began to mutter in a low voice. The priest saw a deep mark on her neck which clearly indicated she had been bitten by a vampire. The priest said, 400 years have passed, but till today, no one has been able to find out who the first vampire was. Then Maria's voice echoed, "The first vampire is my master, a prince. He will soon come to take his princess." Upon hearing this, the ground seemed to slip from under everyone's feet. On the other hand, we see the darkness of night, a dense forest, and in the middle of it, a horse-drawn carriage slowly moving forward. In the carriage sits Jonathan, a young lawyer heading towards a mysterious place. Suddenly, the carriage driver nervously stops the carriage and says, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't go any further because the wolves come out to hunt now." Saying this, he hands Jonathan his luggage, turns around, and disappears. Now, there is only silence all around and the whistling sound of the wind. Jonathan is forced to proceed on foot. After walking 4 hours, he finally reaches his destination, a massive, dark, and scary castle that would make anyone's soul tremble. As soon as he steps inside, the door behind him closes by itself. Then the door in front opens by itself and then slams shut loudly. Jonathan's breathing quickens. He was just looking around when suddenly a shadow of a person appears on the balcony. Lightning flashes, and the shadow disappears. As Jonathan turns around, an old man is standing behind him. White hair, red eyes, and a completely expressionless face. He gently extinguishes the torch, and immediately all the lights in the palace light up by themselves. Now he says with a smile, "I am Prince Vlad, whom some also know as Dracula." After this, both sit at the dining table. Jonathan, desperate with hunger, starts eating, but Dracula doesn't eat a morsel. He just watches Jonathan with his cold eyes, and as soon as he moves his hand, the plate in front slides over to Jonathan by itself. Jonathan is startled but thinks it must be some trick. Little did he know this wasn't magic but the beginning of the most terrifying moment of his life. While Jonathan is taking papers out of his bag, Dracula's gaze falls on a small mouse running in the corner of the room. He smiles slightly, and in a moment, picks up a fork and impales it against the wall. Then he squeezes that mouse as if it were a lemon, and its blood starts dripping into a bowl. He licks the blood as if it were nectar for him, while for others it was poison. Jonathan is stunned seeing all this, but hiding his fear, he hands over the papers and says, "The government wants to buy this old mansion of yours and turn it into a hospital." Just then, his bag falls to the ground, and the cross inside rolls out. Dracula's gaze fixes on that cross. His eyes start turning red. He asks in a low but heavy voice, "Do you believe in God?" Jonathan stammers a little and says, No, a carriage driver just gave this to me." Dracula gives a light laugh and, raising his pointed fingers, gestures in the air. Immediately, the cross rises in the air and falls straight into the fire, burning up. Then he comes to Jonathan and says in a cold voice, "Now the night has deepened. It's time to sleep." He escorts him to his room and says, "Remember, after dark falls, do not leave this room." As Dracula turns, his shadow on the wall grows longer, as if it were taking on a separate, monstrous form. Then he returns to the hall, stops in front of a dark statue, and says softly, "Keep an eye on this human." Meanwhile, Jonathan sits in his room and starts reading a book. The book contains the history of the very castle. Then his eyes fall on an old page with a picture of the young Vlad. But the page after it is torn, and as he tries to turn the page, he hears the sound of someone breathing outside the window. The atmosphere there is extremely scary. Spider webs everywhere, old coffins, and dust settled on the walls. Jonathan's breathing quickens, but curiosity forces him to move forward. Slowly, he reaches a coffin and, with trembling hands, lifts its lid. Then his eyes widen in shock. Inside the coffin lies Dracula, his eyes closed and a strange smile on his lips, as if he were in a deep sleep or waiting for prey. Jonathan retreats in fear. But then Dracula's eyes open, and his cold voice echoes, "You shouldn't have come here." Suddenly, several gargoyles emerge from the darkness and attack Jonathan. He tries to scream, but before he can, he is knocked unconscious. Dracula begins to speak in a slow, heavy voice. "Centuries ago, when I was human, my name was Vlad. I was a brave warrior of Transylvania, and there was only one love in my life, Elizabeta." He goes on to tell how enemies attacked his kingdom and Vlad had to go to war. As he left, Elizabeta had said, "If you don't return, I won't live either." Moisture glistens in Dracula's eyes. He says, "I won the war, but someone delivered the news of my victory incorrectly. People spread the news in the palace that I had died, and hearing this, my Elizabeta threw herself from the heights of the palace." Jonathan's eyes widen in surprise. Dracula continues, "When I returned, she was lying before me, drenched in blood. The church said that whoever takes their own life cannot find peace for their soul. But I could not accept that rule of God. I rebelled against my very God, and at that moment, I lost my humanity." Dracula clenches his fist in anger and says, "I swore that until I get my Elizabeta back, even death could do nothing to me." Jonathan is terrified hearing his words because he now understood that Dracula was not an ordinary monster but the vengeful face of a broken love. Dracula tells Jonathan that for centuries, he only waited for Elizabeta's return because he believed that holy souls are reborn. He searched for her everywhere, but finding her was impossible. The Black Plague had swallowed half the women, and those who remained went to holy places like churches, where he was forbidden to set foot. He became lonely and so mad in love with Elizabeta that in despair, he tried to take his own life by jumping from the palace window. But each time, death rejected him. Then he resolved that if he couldn't find her, Elizabeta would come to him herself. For 100 years, he prepared a perfume using magical flowers, whose fragrance could intoxicate anyone. He went to Italy to test it, and the women there, enchanted by the scent of that perfume, started running after him. Now he could make anyone dance to his tune with that fragrance. But one day, he felt he had finally found Elizabeta. But when he went closer, he saw it was someone else. That night, everyone started mocking him, and at that moment, he understood that he would only find beautiful women at social gatherings, not Elizabeta. Dracula says that when he realized that true love existed only with Elizabeta, he decided that he would not search for her alone anymore. Instead, he would turn all the women of the world into vampires so that they could all search for Elizabeta together. That very night, he bit all the women at the gathering, including Maria. After this, he went to Elizabeta's grave and broke open her coffin, but only ashes remained inside. Seeing this, Dracula was shattered and swore he would never leave this castle again. Then he created his servant gargoyles, who brought him treasures from around the world, and those vampire women started searching for Elizabeta. Hearing all this, Jonathan becomes emotional and tells Dracula that he can understand his situation because he too truly loves a girl, Mina. When Dracula sees Mina's picture, he is stunned because she looks exactly like Elizabeta. After this, Dracula lets Jonathan go without killing him and orders the gargoyles, "Go, bring me a lot of blood so that when I meet Mina, I can look young and beautiful." On the other hand, in Paris, Priest Dumont shows a picture and says, "We must find this woman because she is the key to reaching Dracula." Then the priest opens a book and explains, if a human insults God, God does not give them death but a life worse than death. But if one repents from the heart, that same God can forgive. That means if Dracula is killed, all the vampires will become human again. Just then, Simon arrives and, seeing the picture in the doctor's hand, says, "That's the same girl who was sitting in the visitor's room." Hearing this, Dumont and the priest immediately run towards that room and meet Mina there. Mina tells them that she is Maria's best friend. They met at a party. Since then, Mina and Maria were always together. But on the wedding day, when Maria saw the bishop, she suddenly went crazy in a strange way. Mina says that sometimes she felt as if Maria was not from this century. There was something mysterious and supernatural about her. Meanwhile, Dracula, disguised as a beggar, arrives at the convent. A nun doesn't recognize him and, showing pity, brings him inside. But as soon as Dracula steps inside, he suddenly removes his disguise. The old terrifying royal glow returns to his face. He takes out that magical perfume he had prepared centuries ago from his pocket and sprinkles it on the statue of Jesus. Within moments, the fragrance of that perfume spreads throughout the convent. There was such magic in that fragrance that all the nuns, one by one, became intoxicated and were drawn towards Dracula, as if some invisible force was calling them. Their eyes were intoxicated, and they started falling at Dracula's feet one by one. Meanwhile, Dracula looked at them with a terrifying smile. The nuns were desperately longing to get close to him. As they fell around Dracula, he lunged at them with a devilish smile. His eyes began to burn like red embers, and the next moment, he sank his sharp teeth into their necks. The convent filled with echoes of screams, but no one could stop him. Within moments, the entire convent turned into a silence of blood. Back at the castle, Jonathan was left alone. Seizing this opportunity, he used all his strength to break his chains. As soon as the chains broke, he carefully placed his feet on the ground and quietly moved towards the basement to escape the castle. But just then, a gargoyle from an upper window spotted him. It immediately growled loudly and called its companions. As Jonathan moved towards the window, the gargoyle cut the rope he was holding with an axe, causing Jonathan to hang from the wall. Now Jonathan, swinging from the wall, falls down and tumbles onto a snow-covered lake. The gargoyles jump down from above and move towards him. Their claws scraped against the ice. But then one gargoyle fell through the breaking ice and sank into the lake. Seeing this, the others retreated. Jonathan, amidst cold breaths, slowly crawled forward on the lake's surface. The cold was seeping into his bones, but there was still courage in his steps. After this, we see Dracula, who now looked much younger and more powerful than before. His face was glowing as if the fatigue of centuries had suddenly vanished. Now he arrives at Simon's clinic and, upon entering, changes the atmosphere of the entire room with the fragrance of his magical perfume. Within moments, Simon's eyes become dazed, and he falls under Dracula's control. Dracula says to him in a calm voice, "Take me to her." Without thinking, Simon takes him to Maria's room. As soon as Maria sees Dracula, a crazed joy spreads across her face. She says in a panting voice, I have found Elisabetta." Hearing this, a dangerous smile appears on Dracula's lips. He places Simon before her as a reward and says, "This reward is for you. Drink his blood." Maria pounces and sinks her teeth into Simon's neck. Silence falls over the room. Meanwhile, the priest is researching in his old books. Suddenly, he finds a centuries-old picture, and upon seeing it, his face turns pale. Just then, a man enters and says, "The doctor has called for you." Now the priest reaches Dumont. Dumont says in a panicked voice that Maria has disappeared and Simon is no longer human. The priest sees the bite marks on his neck and senses that the same perfume fragrance he had once read about concerning Dracula is spread on his skin. Now, as Dumont describes the appearance of that mysterious person, the priest's eyes widen. He says in a trembling voice, "Oh God, he is here, and now Mina is in danger." After this, we see Mina, who appears very restless and confused. Just then, suddenly the doorbell rings. Mina opens the door, and there stands Maria completely healthy, young, and as beautiful as before. Mina asks in surprise, "But you were sick, weren't you?" Maria smiles and replies that Dr. Dumont has now permitted her to go home. Then she tells Mina that she has a very special friend who is eagerly waiting to meet her. Maria tells Mina to wear nice clothes because they are going out. A little later, both arrive at a splendid hotel where Dracula is already waiting for them. As soon as Dracula's eyes fall on Mina, they stop. It seemed as if he had found his lost love, Elisabetta, again. Maria smilingly introduces Mina to Dracula. Dracula immerses himself in praising her. "Your eyes are like a mirror of some centuries-old memory." He takes her hand and kisses it. Strange visions start appearing in Mina's mind, as if she had seen Dracula somewhere before, long ago. She gets nervous and immediately makes an excuse to leave. But Dracula follows her to the fair. There, Mina goes into a haunted house where she gets scared by a fake skeleton falling suddenly. Dracula immediately pulls her out. Outside, Mina starts playing a gun shooting game. Just then, Dracula comes from behind, holds her hands, and starts teaching her how to aim. At that moment, Mina starts seeing those old visions again, like memories from another life. A little later, both return to the hotel. There, Dracula shows Mina a small music box, the very one he had given to his wife Elisabetta centuries ago. His eyes still reflected that unfinished love. An old, mysterious tune starts playing from the music box. Mina listens to the tune carefully, and suddenly the color of her face changes. The tune feels familiar to her from somewhere, as if she had heard it before, perhaps in another life. Slowly, some blurred images start emerging in her mind, a woman standing near a window of an old castle, and a man who looks exactly like Dracula. Mina gets nervous and shouts at Dracula in anger, "You are working some magic on me, playing with my mind." Dracula, looking into her eyes, says softly, "No, Mina, I am only telling the truth that you yourself have forgotten. Elisabetta was my wife, and I am sure that you are her." Mina, surprised and angry, replies, I am Mina, not Elizabeta. Dracula just smiles slightly, as if he knows what the truth is. Then he offers her the music box and says, keep this with you. Perhaps one day it will remind you of everything. After this, he comes to drop Mina off at her home. The night was cold, but Mina's heart was restless. As soon as she enters the house, she finds the priest and Dr. Dumont there, treating the injured Jonathan. Mina can't understand what is happening. Then the priest looks at her and says, Mina, you must stay away from that man. He is not human. He is a vampire. He drinks people's blood and uses that mysterious fragrant perfume to control them. Mina's breath stops. Only one question was revolving in her mind, is Dracula really what everyone is saying, or is he truly the one she had loved centuries ago? The priest carefully looks at Mina's neck. He suspected that perhaps Dracula had left his bite marks on her, but there were no marks on her throat. This confused him even more. Mina didn't want to hear anything more now. Fear and confusion were clearly visible in her eyes. She quickly runs away from there, goes to her room, and locks the door. Now she starts crying bitterly. She couldn't understand what was happening to her. Her heart was being drawn towards Dracula, but her mind kept telling her to stay away from him. Crying, her eyes fall on the small music box that Dracula had given her. She slowly opens it. As the box opens, the same old tune starts playing, the one she had heard before. Mina's eyes blink, and suddenly scenes from the past start appearing before her. She is standing in a palace, wearing a white gown, and Dracula is bending down, kissing her hand. The warmth of that moment, that feeling, everything started feeling real to her. Slowly, she becomes completely lost in these visions. But as soon as her eyes open, she retreats in fear because Dracula was standing right in front of her. Mina's breathing quickens. She says in a trembling voice, what are you doing here? Get out of here. Please, go away. Dracula looks at her with calm eyes and says, if I leave, will your heart be able to forget me, Mina? Mina cannot say anything, but the look in her eyes clearly showed both fear and love. Pain and truth were both visible in Dracula's eyes. He moves closer to Mina and says softly, Mina, you don't know for how many centuries I have been waiting for you. But Mina, screaming, steps back. Just don't say anything more. She was trembling, filled with fear and confusion. Dracula takes a deep breath and moves towards the window. He looks out into the cold air. Then he says, if you don't want to hear my truth, then perhaps there's no meaning to my existence. He is about to jump from the window when Mina, panicking, shouts, stop. Are you going to kill yourself? Dracula turns to look at her and says, I passed through death long ago, Mina. Now, living without you is impossible. He steps forward and shows the perfume vial in his hand. You think I controlled you? I never used this perfume on you. Saying this, he throws that vial into the fire. Tears start flowing from Mina's eyes. She says in a trembling voice, but you drink human blood. Dracula slowly bows his head. Yes, Mina, I drink blood because I am no longer human. I am a cursed soul, a vampire, but I will never drink your blood. I swear. Just then, a little blood starts dripping from Mina's nose. Dracula unconsciously wipes it with his finger, and as soon as her blood touches his tongue, he pauses for a moment. An old pain flashes in his eyes. Now, holding Mina's hand, he says softly, your blood, your fragrance, everything is just as it was centuries ago. You are my Elizabeta. Mina's breath seems to stop. She starts seeing those old moments again, the palace, the gown, Dracula looking at her with loving eyes, and then she remembers everything. Tears stream from her eyes. She says in a trembling voice, yes, now I remember everything. I am Elizabeta, and you are my Vlad. A spark returns to Dracula's eyes. Both come close to each other, and finally, their love, unfinished for centuries, is completed. They lose themselves in each other's embrace, where time, death, and curse all seem to stand still. The priest picks up his rifle and retreats, but Maria had now fully become a vampire. Her eyes were glowing red, and her fangs were exposed. She grabs the priest's neck and slams him against the wall. Just then, from behind, Jonathan hits her with an iron rod. The rod goes right through her back. But still, she doesn't stop. She shouts loudly, you are all humans, but you will never understand the true meaning of love. Now she turns towards Henry, who was lying on the ground crying. The priest quickly picks up a crucifix and waves it in front of her. As the light of the cross falls on her, Maria starts screaming in pain. Her skin starts burning, and she retreats. Seizing the opportunity, the priest takes out a vial of holy water from his jacket and throws it on her. As the water touches her, smoke starts rising from her face. She writhes and screams, Dracula, save me, but no answer comes. Slowly, her body starts turning to ash and blows away in the wind. Everyone is silent for a moment. Henry is lying on the ground, crying. The priest bends to help him. Just then, Jonathan says, "We must not delay now. Mina is in danger, and she is probably no longer human." The priest nods and says, "Yes, now we must go to Dracula's castle itself. This will all end there. Either Dracula will die, or we will." After this, the three of them, armed, set out into the darkness of the night, heading straight for that castle where centuries-old evil awaited them. Cannonballs hit the castle walls and explode, flying everywhere, but Dracula and Mina remain safe inside the castle. Dracula orders his pet gargoyles to stop any human coming out. Now the priest and his team try to slowly enter the castle. They saw the castle doors closing by themselves, and bloodstains began to glow on the walls. Dracula, now sitting next to Mina, says, "Now you are entitled to my world. You have no need to fear." Mina slowly holds his hands and says, "Now I want to stay with you forever, no matter what happens." Meanwhile, the priest enters the castle's main hall with his team. He sees that Dracula and Mina are safe, but strange shadows are moving on the surrounding walls and floor. Dracula challenges the priest through his gargoyles, "If you try to touch me and Mina, your fate will be the same as Maria's." The priest is a little scared but still steps forward. Dracula and the gargoyles take their positions, ready for the conflict. The silence inside the castle is now the beginning of a great storm, where the final clash between human and vampire is about to happen. The castle's ceiling begins to crack and fall. Then Dracula tells Mina that he must go out and face them, and she should stay in the room. Saying this, Dracula leaves the room. Meanwhile, the gargoyles also attack the soldiers and kill several of them. But the number of soldiers was very large, and they slowly spread throughout the castle. Jonathan takes his team to the basement. As soon as Mina sees the soldiers coming towards her, she closes the room door. Jonathan shows the soldiers the coffin and says that Dracula might be hiding in it. The soldiers fire bullets at the coffin, but just then, Dracula suddenly appears from behind Jonathan and knocks him unconscious. Then, together with the gargoyles, he attacks the soldiers and piles up several soldiers in no time. As soon as the soldiers enter the castle, they yield one by one before Dracula's strength. Just then, Henry, seizing the opportunity, fires bullets at Dracula, but it has no effect on Dracula. Now Dracula cuts Henry's neck and closes the door so no soldier can enter. After this, he places his sword at the priest's throat. The priest stands frozen in fear and whispers, "What will you do?"